The big question is not whether we kill, but how we minimize unnecessary suffering. Let's be honest, no matter how we feed ourselves, we kill other living beings. Death and suffering are part of life. But it doesn't mean that we should take more lives than necessary and cause unnecessary suffering. We as apex predators could theoretically kill every living creature in the world. But we forget one thing. We are not at the top of the food chain because of our claws and fangs, but because of our brains. It is what differentiates us and makes us human. Our ability to be rational. Even in Germany, where the Animal Welfare Act forbids inflicting pain, suffering or harm on an animal without reasonable cause, this law, unfortunately, is broken every single day for our food system. Now imagine it would be different. What would happen if we value the lives of farm animals as fellow creatures and create a system that is better for humans, animals, and the environment? I grew up on a farm, surrounded by cattle, dogs, and cats. I've seen them being born and I've buried them. Cows cared for their calves that played on the pasture like puppies. The more time we spend with animals, the more they remind us of ourselves. They sleep, they make, they eat, and most importantly, they feel. They are sentient beings who suffer like we do. Does this mean that we shouldn't kill animals? Now that depends. Let's take one step back. What is really different between a human and another animal? We have more things in common than divide us. The biggest demarcation criterion is intelligence. But what if I tell you that there are pigs that are more intelligent than humans, and yet we kill one and not the other? The species boundary is morally irrelevant, and if we were consistent in our interpretation of values and morals, we would not deliberately kill them. There are no secular reasons to place the entirety of animals below humans. Some might argue, sitting behind a computer in an air-conditioned room, that this is just the natural circle of life, like a lion hunting the gazelle. However, we as humans are not part of the natural cycle anymore. Our excessive use of fossil fuels has literally shot us into space. Also, only because something is natural, it doesn't mean it's good. And in comparison to a lion, we have a choice. The problem is, if the life of an animal has no moral value, what gives human lives value? If they are valued, then we can only sacrifice their existence if our own existence is threatened. Simply put, either humans suffer or animals do. And let's not be hypocrites, we all want to live, even if it means we have to kill for it. This leaves only two legitimate reasons to kill another being. Is it necessary for human nutritional needs? And does it increase the overall efficiency of the food system when resources are scarce? Since the plant-based diet would be nutritionally sufficient for the majority of the world's population, even if knowledge and access to a diverse food basket is needed, our only real reason to use animals is to increase efficiency. That way we can provide more food, create a production buffer for changing climate conditions, and preserve or improve the foundation of food production and human life. Air, soil, and water. But our current system, it's definitely not efficient. It has bad conversion rates, except for grazing, ruminants, and backyard poultry and pig farming, and bad utilization of land and crops. Worldwide, 40% of cropland and crop calories, worse in the US and in Europe, end up as livestock feed, which would be able to directly feed 800 million people who experience hunger every year. We feed billions of animals, yet can't feed all humans. It looks like we don't really care too much about human life either. And it's clear, we have to move away from the current way of farming. We have a handful of high-yielding breeds, isolated from the natural habitat, with only one purpose: to produce as much as possible, and more than we need. Their well-being is irrelevant as long as they fulfill that one function, and they get nothing in return for what they give us.
The worst trade deal ever made.
Although farm animals are legally protected in Germany and Europe, economic interests still take precedence over these laws that are supposed to protect them. The Animal Welfare Act in the US is even worse, as it doesn't cover farm animals at all. So why are cows, pigs, and chickens not considered animals? On a federal level, they have very little protection. It shows these laws are completely arbitrary. We humans only made laws that serve our taste buds and our profits, not our own health and well-being, and definitely not that of animals. So, if we had to choose today between the current system and a purely plant-based diet, the choice would be easy from an ethical and environmental point of view. But what if there was an even more efficient way? A way that paradoxically could kill less living beings by sacrificing a few. It's like the trolley problem. If we just have to pull a lever, why don't we? Do we just want to feel morally superior or actually save more lives? Until we can synthesize food in a machine like in Star Trek, we can only maximize the efficiency today by integrating farm animals. But that is only true if they strictly only eat what we can't. Grass, crop, and food residues, and we have a lot of them as long as we eat flour, starch, oil, beer, and sugar. And fodder crops such as clover grass, alfalfa, or legume mixtures that are necessary in arable crop rotations to control weeds, build humus, and fix nitrogen. Otherwise, we need more gas-guzzling machines and factories to fulfill these tasks. Grazing cattle can actually have a net positive contribution to the food system. And without human edible feed, a lower use of energy, pesticides, water, greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuels and land compared to current and plant-based systems. And these cattle also don't need machines delivering their grass all year round, unlike humans who can't seem to live without DoorDash anymore. And can all that really save lives? Yes. It reduces the long-term risk for forest fires, tornadoes, and droughts. Besides, any form of modern agriculture kills wildlife. Harvesting, tilling, pest control, exposure to predators, fertilizers, and pesticides kill mice, birds, rabbits, snakes, insects, mold, frogs, prawns, and fish. Billions and billions of animals die every year in this process. So the more we can decrease the land cultivation for crops, both for us and especially livestock, the better. The system that can do that, and even more, is the multifunctional animal husbandry. Or it's like a Swiss Army knife with a screwdriver, saw, pliers, all the different tools, while factory farming is this little toothpick. It is essentially nothing new, since it was the norm until mechanization and high specialization. Animals were kept on pastures, used to pull plows, and fed with food scraps. So the goal is that the animals provide as many functions as possible. Cattle can not only convert inedible plants into milk and meat and provide other resources like leather and fertilizers, but also take care of grasslands with positive functions for biodiversity and carbon storage, utilize food industry residues and help with species preservation. In theory, they could even offer companionship or just be excellent cuddle buddies. In many parts of the world, they still serve as draft animals, replacing millions of tractors and preventing the release of millions of tons of CO2. For it to work, it needs two fundamental principles. The welfare and health of the animals have top priority for maximum multifunctionality and long-term performance, just how a sick athlete couldn't perform. And the highest welfare is achieved in a natural living environment and social structures. We don't have to reinvent cattle. We just need to let them be what they were meant to be. Resilient, self-sufficient grazers, genetically adapted to their respective environment and thriving in natural herd structures. These cattle would be the Navy SEALs or the Bear Grylls of the Palm Kingdom, grazing on soft pastures year-round or at least during the growing season, instead of concrete floors, provided with a natural diet, mostly grass, leaves, and herbs, with minimal concentrated fodder, ideally with cow-bound calf rearing and pasture slaughter to avoid stress. This system not only fulfills more animal functions, but also has the highest sustainability potential, indicating that the functions of animals could be used as a practical and easy measure for sustainability. Then we don't need any laboratories to figure out if we should support a specific farm or not, especially as consumers. Could we still eat as much meat as nowadays? No, but it would actually be better for us and align more with nutritional recommendations. In Germany, the system will provide about 150 grams of beef, a third of a pound, and 4.2 liters or 1.1 gallons of milk per week. And worldwide, at least 9 to 23 grams of the daily protein. And instead of panicking now about not getting enough protein from a mainly plant-based diet, on average we are more likely lacking vegetables, legumes, fruits, nuts, potatoes, and selected whole grains in our diet. So making an argument about health while at the same time not caring about our health is inconsistent. To respond to the argument, it is possible to get enough protein anyway. But taking away a piece of meat from an adult can be like trying to steal a lollipop from a baby. So why is it better than a purely plant-based system? Besides the potential to decrease overall suffering by using less arable land, it can make the food system more resilient while producing more total food. And I get it, we waste food just by throwing it away or currently feeding it to livestock. But that's not the point. Vegans would be the last people on earth that should throw around red herrings. Do we really want to mow grasslands and use fossil fuels instead of grazing cattle? And what would be the alternative of them utilizing crop and food residues? We can produce energy, sure, but we can't eat it. It wastes the potential of food production, ignoring the utilization sequence, human nutrition, animal feed, energy use, and the possibility to feed millions of starving people. What we also shouldn't do if we want to have a secure and stable food system is to fully rely on technology. What if a solar storm one day fries it all? Our system should be prepared for the worst while doing the best. Let's have one last look at the flow chart and at utilization and cultivation improvements. 86% of the feed is currently not eaten by humans, but that is only part of the truth. Technically, some of the food residues are human edible, we just don't eat them. And the claim that land used for livestock couldn't support crops for human nutrition doesn't tell the full story either. Don't get me wrong, we definitely shouldn't change grassland to arable land, causing CO2 emissions. So let me give you an example. Poorer cropland often only produces animal feed as it may not yield high-quality wheat for baking. Instead, it could be used to grow rye, oats, or buckwheat for human consumption. That would require a shift in our diet as well, from soft buns to more flatbreads and porridge. Not to mention how creative humans can be when it comes to food. We eat the weirdest things, but then we are afraid of eating more plants. Alternatively, the cropland could be converted to grassland, protecting soil and storing carbon, returning it to nature and boosting biodiversity with pollinators and positively affecting the food system in the long term. In the end, our consumption and endless pursuit of growth needs limits. Without limits, we fly too close to the sun like Icarus and fall to our death. The system I showed you doesn't try to produce more than we need, and it doesn't exceed planetary boundaries. It has these two limits, the nutritional requirement and the sustainable production potential. It uses the correct utilization sequence, human nutrition, animal feed, and then energy use. So it doesn't waste any product that could be used first for humans and second for animals. And it maximizes the total amount of food produced, while minimizing its inputs. Above all, it shows respect for animals, ensuring that we genuinely uphold animal welfare laws and act in line with our morals. The multifunctional animal husbandry, as part of a fully circular food system, is the best thing we can do for practical change at our current state of technology. And nonetheless, currently the best out-of-the-shelf diet is plant-based. And at most, it is carefully supplemented with animal products from farms you actually know. Because what is the real difference between a lion and you? The lion knows who it kills. Do you know where meat comes from? And if you visit these farms, ask yourself, how many functions are the animals performing? Are they in their natural habitat? Do they only eat what we can't? Do they live a good life? And remember, some struggle like bad weather is part of life. And most of all, is it aligning with your moral values? There are people who say they care about sustainability and animal welfare. And that is wonderful, right? But here's the twist. Are these the same people stopping by fast food chains for buckets of cheap chicken? To justify our consumption, we can't cherry-pick arguments about needing animals for efficient farming while buying from the most inefficient systems. There's a big gap between what we say and what we do. I'm not here to tell you how to eat and how to live, but I think we can all agree on one thing. The way we farm and eat is not working. It harms animals, people, and the environment. And everyone should ask themselves, do you just want to be an animal driven by its appetite, instincts, and desires? Or do you want to be human? But for that, reason must be nurtured like a rose. Ironically, if we would think less about ourselves, our lives would be better. So let's make sure every animal has at least a purpose till it dies. And that includes us. And if we do it right, we can create a world with less unnecessary suffering for everyone.